Hey guys, welcome to PhoneRadar. This is Chetan Bhavani and this is the review of the Xiaomi's Redmi Note 4G. Xiaomi's Redmi Note comes in two variants. The first one is the 3G with the MediaTek MT6592 octa-core processor, and the Redmi Note 4G has the Qualcomm Snapdragon 400 processor. The main difference is with these processors and then the network connectivity. While the 3G one supports 900 and 2100 band HSDPA connectivity, the 4G unit supports 4G LTE with the TD-LTE 1900 and 2300 bands. So with the limited connectivity in India, we already don't see much of a future of 4G already. Still, there are brands coming up with these with the USP being the 4G connectivity itself. While the 4G comes as no difference from the 3G one, you can notice one difference in the hardware aspect. It's with the one SIM card slot, unlike the two slots that are seen under the 3G one. And the other technical difference is with the storage expansion, where both smartphones support the microSD card, but the 4G one supports 64 GB of expandable storage, while the 3G one has 32 GB support. A large phablet in size, this looks almost the same as the Lenovo Vibe Z2 Pro, which has a 16-inch screen when compared to the 5.5 of the Redmi Note, and the OnePlus one with the same 5.5-inch display looks smaller than this. Let me end the design part here because there's a Redmi Note review that we already did, and I talked a lot about the design there already. It's the same story because there's no difference in the design overall. And the only issue with the design is the slippery back, and everything else is good and well placed. The overall size is quite larger than the standard top-end devices with a 5.5-inch display. The back cover is removable and you can see a single 4G SIM slot and a microSD card slot with the 3100 mAh replaceable battery as well. Not really easy to hold and use with a single hand, but what else can we expect from a budget device with such a large screen? Display again is no different, a very good responsive screen, and although the pixel density doesn't boast any huge numbers because it's 720p display at 267 ppi, the color reproduction and viewing angles keep it quite appreciable. Under the bright sunlight as well, there's no issue with the readability, and this is at least better than the Xiaomi's own Redmi 1S smartphone, which had a lot of issues under the sunlight. And just like we felt with the other variant, the sensors do a great job in preventing the pocket dials, though that is not automatically set and you would have to do that manually. We had no issues playing full HD content on the screen, and the color saturation didn't look anywhere bad, and it felt pretty good and neat. While the 3G variant users might feel betrayed about the Android version because it's the Android 4.2.2 Jelly Bean in the Redmi Note 3G, the Redmi Note 4G runs Android 4.4.2 KitKat with the MIUI version 5. And it's only the Android version that is different because there are no big changes that we see in the MIUI version 5, and it's all the same standard options and the mixture of Android and iOS because MIUI always feels a mixture of both of them, having no app drawer but a lot of options with widgets and several other stuff into the direct home screens. And we won't still call this as one of the best ROMs there. As we review the Indian version of the Redmi Note 4G, we see Google package pre-installed, but the apps aren't limited to that because there are a lot of other pre-installed applications that includes the themes, FM radio, recorder, MI Cloud, Torch, Compass, QR scanner, as well as the file explorer from Xiaomi. Right from the lock screen, there are interesting features. Some of them are hidden but not hard to access, and in the settings as well you see a lot of things that can change the way you want to use the UI. As there is no availability of the app drawer, Xiaomi has been giving a lot of changes to the way home screen looks, giving a lot of widgets, effects while shifting between the home screens and such. The entire interface looks like a bit of like dragging, which makes it unified on the other side because you won't feel that there is an issue with the performance, but the UI itself is that way. And the camera combination and for the camera in the Redmi Note 4G is no different from the 3G one at all, but there is one difference we can point out while using both the devices at the same time. The Snapdragon 400 based 4G device is a touch slower in focusing and capturing, taking that noticeable time before readying itself for the next capture. That isn't very much noticed in 3G counterpart, so that is something you might have to note down while you are comparing between these two devices. And the capture quality isn't much different, and the HDR mode in both takes a second or more, which is normal, and the panoramic captures are still disappointing, while the 1080p videos were decent when taken without much shakes, because there's no OIS and there's no software support as well, which can stabilize the videos even a bit. The most important point apart from the connectivity in this smartphone is the chipset powering it. Qualcomm Snapdragon 400, Adreno 305 GPU and 2GB RAM. That's what powers this device, and it's an octa-core CPU in the 3G one with all the 8 cores running at the same time, with the support by Mali 450MP GPU and 2GB of RAM. While there's always a fight between the processors and Qualcomm comes out as a winner, that's not the case here. We won't say that the performance was bad, but still, when you compare that with the Redmi Note 3G, the Redmi Note 3G looks and feels a bit better in performance, and that might be the way SoC handles the multitasking, and the heavy apps and graphics are very well handled by the Mali 450MP4 GPU, and we would definitely vouch for it over the performance on the Snapdragon based device. Benchmark scores were a big disappointment, but we don't limit it to the performance of these scores, and that is why we come up with the conclusion based on how we got the experience of the device based on the different applications and graphics. The issue about the heating up of the device while gaming remains the same, though we did try to play Asphalt 8 for the same time on both the devices, and the Redmi Note 4G seemed to have a lesser heating up of the core. The device never broke a sweat while playing high-end games except for some frame drops, though that doesn't hurt the experience overall. And the video and voice calling are both quite decent, no disturbance, and the device was able to keep the call active on unstable networks as well. Unfortunately, we could not test the 4G data connectivity for a long time, and that is actually the state of 4G in India right now. If there was something that the company should have not shown as a USP for the Redmi Note 4G, it was the 4G connectivity itself, because not even the major cities have a proper LTE coverage, but for the time we tried it, the data network speed was superb and the reception was great. The 3100 mAh battery is one of the best parts of the Redmi Note 4G, which was able to give a day's usage with over 3 hours of screen on time, occasional data network usage while I was moving around, and most of the time it was connected to the Wi-Fi network. And the standby is great, and if the screen usage is lesser, it could take you through the second day as well. So it's not just a single day's usage, but more than that. So while the Redmi Note 4G from Xiaomi faces stiff competition from the likes of Lenovo A6000 priced at ₹7,000, and the Eureka priced at ₹9,000, and even the Lumia 735 from Nokia, if you are trying to mention about any Windows Phone device with LTE connectivity, the battery life and a decent camera keep it a bit ahead than them. But on the other side, the company's own 3G variant of Redmi Note has a better overall performance, and the specs in Eureka looks like beating this smartphone, which is retailing at ₹9999. If you aren't relying on the 4G data connectivity, there's no reason why we would suggest this device over the Redmi Note 3G. So that was our review of the Xiaomi's Redmi Note 4G smartphone, which overall is a very good device and a value for money smartphone. But still, we would go for the Xiaomi Redmi Note 3G if you aren't giving importance to the network connectivity, and if you don't have a lot of thought about the processor that powers the smartphone, because the MediaTek's MT6592 did a better job than the Snapdragon 400 in this aspect. So keep checking PhoneRadar for more videos, reviews and stuff. Thank you.